The incessant honking and the ceaseless trudge of pedestrians formed a cacophony that seemed to ricochet within the confines of my skull. Steel and glass loomed overhead, casting long shadows across the sidewalk where I stood, feeling small, a cog in an indifferent machine. As I navigated through the throng of the midday crowd, a weariness clung to me, a thick fog that no city light could penetrate. "Another day in paradise," I muttered, the words lost amid the urban din. At 32, the city's charm had worn thin, the once alluring pulse now a relentless pounding in my temples. My short brown hair, once meticulously styled, lay flat against my head, a testament to countless hours spent under fluorescent office lighting. The muscles I had maintained with such discipline afforded me little comfort when confined to a swivel chair, staring at spreadsheets that blurred into a monotonous tableau of digits and despair. I needed an escape, something more than the fleeting respite of weekends that seemed to evaporate before they began. The idea had come to me one evening as I watched the sunset between the skyscrapers, its beauty obscured by smog and indifference. The wilderness called to me, a siren song promising the unknown and the unexplored, an antidote to the predictable patterns of city life. Think about it, man. Just us, the woods, no distractions. My voice was almost fervent as I pitched the plan to my friends over our weekly video call, the screen splitting our faces into digital quadrants. Out there, it's different. It's real, I continued, the image of Appalachian forests painting itself behind my eyelids. We need this. Time away from everything. Their nods and smiles beamed back at me through pixels, a shared understanding without the need for words. We were united by more than just history. We were bound by the need to reclaim a part of ourselves lost amidst the concrete and chaos. The desire to explore the unknown wasn't just about adventure. It was about rediscovery, a chance to strip away the veneer of urban life and confront the rawness of nature and of ourselves. "Let's do it, Henry. You always know how to shake things up," one of them said, his face alight with the kind of excitement that only true friendship can kindle. "Absolutely," another agreed, his grin infectious. "We're in. Let's find out what's out there." As our plans took shape, so too did the sense of anticipation. There was something thrilling about stepping into the woods, where the rules of man gave way to the ancient laws of the wild. Every rustle of leaves would carry weight, every snap of a twig, a story, and the whispering winds would speak secrets meant only for those daring enough to listen. In those moments, planning our escape, I felt the weariness lift, replaced by an eagerness I hadn't known I possessed. The city, with its endless drone, seemed a world away, and the looming trip beckoned like a beacon, a promise of freedom, camaraderie, and the enigmatic allure of the untouched Appalachia. "Let's find our adventure," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile dream. But it was real, and we were going, leaving behind the urban sprawl for the haunting beauty of the forests. Little did we know, the shadows that danced between the trees harbored more than just the unknown. They held a darkness eager to envelop us in its chilling embrace. "All right, everyone check your gear one last time," I instructed, my voice a mix of authority and excitement. We stood in a circle, the dim glow of the early morning sun casting long shadows on the pavement. My friends rummaged through their backpacks, ensuring that sleeping bags were rolled tight and provisions were accounted for. "Got the map, Henry?" Marcus asked, his eyebrow raised in mock seriousness as he hoisted his pack onto his shoulders. "Of course," I replied, patting the folded paper in my pocket like it was a talisman capable of warding off the chaos we eagerly sought to escape. Can't have us wandering aimlessly into the woods. "Though that'd be quite the adventure, huh?" Liz chimed in, her laughter lightening the palpable tension that always accompanies the precipice of a journey into the unknown. "An adventure we'll have," I promised, locking eyes with each of them, but let's try not to become part of the local folklore just yet. As we piled into the car, the city streets buzzed around us, indifferent to our departure. As the urban landscape receded, replaced by the verdant blur of the countryside, so too did the weight of daily life. It wasn't until the final turnoff, where civilization seemed to end and wilderness began, that the full magnitude of our decision hit me. The narrow road wound its way through the dense Appalachian forest, trees standing like silent sentinels guarding the secrets of the wild. The deeper we ventured, the more the woods closed in around us, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were trespassing into a realm that was not our own. "Guys, look at this place," Michael whispered, awe lacing his voice as the car came to a stop and we stepped out into the clearing that would serve as our temporary home. The campsite lay nestled in a natural hollow surrounded by towering oaks and maples. Their leaves whispered in the gentle breeze, a hushed conversation that filled the air with both beauty and an undercurrent of something else. It was as if the forest held its breath, watching us with unseen eyes, waiting to see what we would do next. "Wow," Liz breathed out, taking in the haunting majesty of our surroundings. "This is perfect, Henry. Absolutely perfect." "Couldn't agree more," Marcus said, but his usual grin wavered ever so slightly, as if he too sensed that we had crossed an unspoken boundary. "Let's set up camp," I suggested, eager to establish some semblance of order in the face of the overwhelming wilderness. "We've got a lot of daylight left, and I want to explore before dusk." As we unloaded our gear and began to settle in, a silence settled over the group, a mixture of reverence for the beauty of the place and an instinctual wariness of its depths. The laughter and banter from earlier seemed distant now, replaced by the low murmur of nature's symphony, a sound both comforting and disquieting. "Here's to the adventure we signed up for," I toasted later that evening, raising a flask around the newly lit campfire. "May it be everything we hoped for," Liz added, the flickering flames reflecting in her eyes. "Cheers," we echoed in unison, not knowing that the true test of our mettle lay just beyond the firelight, in the shadowy embrace of Appalachia's ancient woods. The twilight seeped through the dense canopy above, casting a mosaic of shadows upon our campsite. I stood at the edge of our temporary abode, peering into the thickening gloom of Appalachia's embrace. A hush hung heavy in the air, the kind that presses against your eardrums and makes you sharply aware of the blood coursing through your veins. The trees stood like silent sentinels, their tall figures bordering on the realm of giants from the bedtime stories of our youth. "Creepy, isn't it?" Jim whispered beside me, his voice betraying a note of awe. "Beautifully so," I replied, my gaze not shifting from the forest that seemed to watch us with unseen eyes. There's something primal about it, like we've stepped back in time. "Or into another world entirely," Jess added, her arms wrapped around herself as if the chill of isolation was more than just a feeling. "Let's keep the fire going," Roger suggested, adjusting his glasses with a nervous gesture. It'll keep the wildlife away." "Sure thing," Lisa said, tossing another log onto the flames, which greedily licked its new fuel, sending sparks spiraling upwards towards the starless sky. We settled around the warmth, the crackle of the fire. An intimate symphony played just for us. But as the darkness deepened, so did the silence, until it was broken by the subtlest of sounds, a rustling not far from our circle of light. We all froze, our collective breaths held in a moment of uncertainty. "Probably just a raccoon," I said, though I couldn't mask the tightness in my own voice. "Raccoons don't sound that heavy," Roger murmured, his eyes darting toward the opaque blackness beyond our camp. "Let's try to get some sleep," I suggested, feigning a confidence I didn't feel. "We have a big day tomorrow." We retreated to our tents, The fabric walls, a thin veil between us and the wilderness. As I lay there, the softness of my sleeping bag seemed incongruous with the harshness outside. It wasn't long before a new noise joined the night's chorus, an eerie giggle, like that of children playing games long after they should be asleep. My heart quickened, and I turned my head toward the sound, holding my breath. "Did you hear that?" Lisa's voice cut through the tent wall, tinged with uncertainty. "Go to sleep, Liz. It's nothing," I called back, but the words felt hollow, even to me. The giggles faded, leaving behind a heavier silence, a void where our laughter once resonated. I closed my eyes, willing sleep to come, yet the unseen gaze of the woods pressed close, whispering of secrets and fears best left undisturbed. I awoke to the muffled sounds of concern punctuating the crisp morning air. Groggily, I unzipped my tent and stepped out into the dawning light that had yet to chase away the shadows lurking between the trees. The campsite was a mess, with our gear strewn about as if a whirlwind had swept through in the night. "Where's the stove?" Jessica's voice held an edge of panic that immediately set me on alert. "Please tell me someone's playing a sick joke," Jim added, his usual joviality replaced by a furrowed brow as he searched around the overturned coolers. Lisa was on her knees, rifling through her backpack. Her hands emerged empty. My camera. The unease that had nestled in my chest overnight bloomed into full-blown dread. Our essentials, items we had meticulously checked off our list before turning in, had vanished. No stove, no camera, not even the map. We were left vulnerable, stripped of more than just our possessions. "Did anyone leave the camp last night?" Roger asked, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose, his eyes scanning each of us for signs of deceit. "Of course not," I snapped, more sharply than intended. "We would have heard." "Then, how do you explain this, Henry?" Lisa's accusation hung in the air like mist. It clung to my skin, an unwelcome sheen of suspicion. "Someone might be messing with us," I suggested, trying to keep my voice steady. "We can't jump to conclusions." "Or something," Jim said, his gaze drifting to the dense woods that seemed to watch us with unseen eyes. "Great. That's all we need. A ghost thief," Roger muttered, but his attempt at humor fell flat against the backdrop of our predicament. "Guys, let's stay calm," I urged. "We need to work together, not turn on each other." "Easy for you to say," Jessica retorted, her arms crossed pensively. "You're not the one who lost something important." "Everything missing is important," I countered, feeling the weight of their collective stares, as heavy as the fog that shrouded the peaks around us. "Let's just pack up and get out of here," Lisa said, her voice small but determined. "Without a map," Roger shook his head. "That's asking to get more lost." "Then what? Stay here, like sitting ducks waiting for whatever took our stuff to come back." Lisa's fear was palpable, her free-spirited nature crumbling under the pressure of the unknown. "Nobody's taking anything else," Jim asserted, casting a wary look over his shoulder. "Right, because that worked so well for us last night," Roger shot back. "Enough," I raised my voice, more to silence my own creeping terror than their mounting arguments. "We'll figure this out, but right now, we need to stick together." The words felt like stones in my mouth, heavy with a responsibility I wasn't sure I could carry. As the group reluctantly gathered their personal belongings, we became a circle of mistrust, each of us harboring doubts not only about our safety, but about each other. The wilderness had seeped into our bonds, twisting them into gnarled roots that threatened to split apart at any moment. I took a deep breath, the chill of the air filling my lungs. "Let's check our phones. Maybe one of us can get a signal out here," I suggested, trying to inject a note of practicality into the situation. My friends fumbled with their devices, thumbs sliding over screens that remained dark, unresponsive to our desperation. One by one, they looked up at me, their eyes reflecting the dawning realization. We were cut off, the invisible threads that connected us to the outside world, severed by the dense canopy and the indifferent mountains. "Nothing," Lisa murmured, her voice tinged with defeat. The rest echoed her sentiment, their gazes falling to the forest floor littered with fallen leaves and the remnants of our dwindling hope. "Okay," I said, steadying my voice as best I could. "We don't need phones to find our way back." But even as I spoke, a flicker of uncertainty passed through me. Was I leading them deeper into danger? The thought gnawed at me, a worm burrowing into the core of my confidence. I had always been the one with the plan, the leader. Now, my resolve wavered like a candle flame in the wind. "Should we try to retrace our steps?" Jim asked, his brow furrowed. "Without the map or compass, it's risky," I admitted, feeling the weight of every eye upon me. "Then what's your brilliant idea, Henry?" Roger's voice was sharp, laced with accusation. "First, we stay calm," I said, locking eyes with him, challenging his doubt with my own wavering certainty. "Panic is our worst enemy right now." As the words left my lips, an unsettling silence descended upon us, punctuated only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant call of an unseen bird. It was as if the forest itself was listening. "Did you hear that?" Lisa whispered suddenly, her eyes wide as she scanned the tree line. "Probably just an animal," I replied, but my heart hammered against my ribs. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes tracking our every move. The others huddled closer, their body language shifting from annoyance to fear. Our collective breaths seemed loud in the stillness, our senses heightened to any stray sound or movement. The woods no longer felt empty. They thrummed with a presence that defied explanation, a darkness that lurked just beyond our perception. "Guys, let's keep our heads," I urged them, though the effort to remain composed strained against the tide of panic rising within me. "We're not alone out here. Not really. We have each other." But even as I spoke, I could feel the thin veneer of control slipping. My own doubts echoed back at me, magnified by the vast, unknowable wilderness that surrounded us. The isolation was complete, a void where once there had been the comforting hum of civilization. And in that void, something else had taken root, something inexplicable and terrifying that whispered with the leaves and watched from the shadows. "Tomorrow," I promised, more to myself than to them, "we walk out of here together." But the night ahead loomed long and full of terrors, and I knew our ordeal was far from over. The moon hung low, a pale witness to our huddle of fear. A branch snapped in the distance, and I could feel their eyes on me, waiting for a command, a plan, anything. "Okay," I said, my decision coming forth with a clarity that surprised even me. At first light, we pack up and leave. No arguments. I met their gaze one by one, my resolve hardening. We stick together, keep our wits about us, and we'll walk out the same way we came in. The sounds of the night pressed close, a symphony of whispers that promised no sleep would come to our haunted encampment. Tomorrow, we would flee these woods, leaving behind the unknown horrors that stalked us. But tonight, we lay in the heart of a nightmare, praying for dawn and the salvation it might bring. "Grab your stuff. Let's not waste time," I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. The rustle of nylon and the clinking of gear filled the void as we packed away our temporary home. Each snap of a buckle, each tug of a zipper seemed to echo into the vastness, a proclamation of our surrender to the unseen forces that drove us from these cursed woods. "Ready?" I asked, hoisting my backpack onto my shoulders. They nodded, their faces etched with lines of worry that belied their earlier doubts. We stood, a tight-knit phalanx ready to brave the unknown path ahead, united by fear and the unspoken hope that we'd emerge from this nightmare unscathed. Branches reached out like skeletal fingers, grasping at the fabric of my jacket as I pushed forward. The forest seemed to have grown teeth during our brief stay, every thicket and underbrush gnawing at our nerves. This way, I said, more out of habit than certainty. The path we'd carved through the dense woods had vanished, swallowed by an unnerving silence that pressed down on us. "Are you sure?" Jess's voice quivered slightly, her usual resolve crumbling with each step into the unknown. I glanced back at Roger, who was busy pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose, a nervous tic that seemed to grow more frequent with our deepening predicament. Jim cracked a joke about breadcrumbs and lost fairy tale children, but the laughter died quickly, smothered by the oppressive atmosphere. "Positive," I lied. The landmarks we'd passed just days before were gone, as if the forest had conspired to shift its very bones, rearranging itself to disorient us further. A low fog crept along the ground, ghostly tendrils curling around our ankles, tugging us towards despair. "Something's not right," Lisa murmured, her artist's eyes scanning the eerie tableau before us. Her intuition, once a beacon for adventure, now felt like a harbinger of doom. "Keep moving," I urged, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Our footsteps were muffled, the earth absorbing the sound, leaving us in a bubble of isolation that seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. And then it appeared, an ancient bridge, its wooden planks weathered and warped, arcing over the gaping maw of a ravine that I was certain hadn't been on our map. The abyss below beckoned, promising a descent into true darkness. Was this here before? Roger's question hung in the air, unanswered. We knew it hadn't been. The structure looked as though it had sprouted from the land itself, an organic growth of rot and neglect. "Doesn't matter," I replied, swallowing the lump in my throat. "It's here now." The bridge creaked ominously as we approached, protesting the weight of even the air around it. Each board seemed to eye us with malicious intent, waiting to betray the next unwary footfall to the void below. "Let's be careful," Jess said, her nurse's instincts kicking in as she eyed the dubious construction. She reached out to test the nearest plank with her boot, flinching as the wood groaned beneath her. "Stay close," I instructed, one at a time. I could feel the group's collective heart pounding in rhythm with my own. We were a creature of many limbs, each one trembling as we inched closer to our crossing. Every creak was a thunderclap, every sway a storm surge that threatened to sweep us away. "Cross your fingers," Jim muttered, though the gesture felt futile against the enormity of our dread. "Or say a prayer," Lisa added softly, her usual vibrancy dimmed by the looming specter of the bridge. As the first to set foot on the bridge, I felt the precarious nature of our situation fully. The wood bowed slightly under my weight, a groan escaping from its aged core. The ravine yawned beneath me, a mouth wide open in silent laughter at our plight. "Slow and steady," I called back to the others, each word laced with the unspoken terror that clawed at the edges of my psyche. One wrong step and the frail construct might unleash its pent-up malice, sending us plummeting into the shadows that writhed below. The bridge held, but so did the fear, a living thing that wound its way around us as tightly as the mist. We were intruders here, trespassers in a realm that was never ours to claim. As we forged ahead, I couldn't shake the feeling that something watched from just beyond the veil of fog, waiting for us to falter. I tested each weathered plank beneath my boots, the bridge protesting with a symphony of creaks and groans. The others hung back, their eyes wide as they measured the risk in every splintered board and frayed rope. I offered them a nod, a silent signal that, for now, we dared to defy the abyss below. "Come on," I urged, my voice barely above a whisper, as if the silence were a sacred thing, not to be disturbed, one at a time. They shuffled forward, each step an eternity drawn out by the tension that clung to the air like the morning mist. Sarah went first, her breath coming in sharp gasps that cut through the stillness. Mark followed, his jaw set in grim determination. One by one, they entrusted their lives to the tenuous path that I had vetted. Then it was Lisa's turn. Her wavy hair seemed to absorb the scant light, casting shadows across her determined features. Always the brave soul. She stepped onto the bridge without hesitation, her artist's heart perhaps captivated by the haunting beauty of our perilous crossing. "Be careful," I called out softly, my words falling like leaves from a dying tree. She nodded, her footfalls gentle yet deliberate upon the creaking bridge. But as she reached the midpoint, where the mists grew thick as smoke from a snuffed candle, Lisa paused. A chill shivered down my spine, an omen that whispered of things unseen and unspoken. "Lisa." My question was a stone thrown into a fathomless pool, waiting for the ripples that never came. In a heartbeat, she was gone, swallowed by the fog as though the bridge itself had devoured her. The rope barrier swayed, empty and taunting. "Lisa." Panic clawed at my throat, raw and savage. The group erupted into chaos, a cacophony of fear and confusion that mirrored the turmoil within me. "Where is she?" Sarah's voice cracked like a branch underfoot, her eyes darting wildly to and fro. "Lisa." Mark's call joined mine, a duet of desperation that echoed off the trees and into the void. But there was no answer, only the oppressive silence that pressed in from the woods, as if the forest itself held its breath, savoring our horror. "Over here! Guys, come quick!" Mark's shout cut through the dense air, urgent and edged with terror. I rushed towards his voice, my boots slipping on the moist earth. As I reached him, my stomach churned at the sight before us. A small clearing lay violated by violence. A deer, its once graceful form reduced to a grotesque still life of flesh and bone. The earth around it painted in dark, wet strokes. Its unseeing eyes stared at the canopy above, reflecting nothing but the void that had claimed its last breath. "God, what did this?" Sarah whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. "Keep moving," I urged, my eyes scanning the treetops as if expecting the architect of this nightmare to reveal itself. "We have to find Lisa." Pushing past the carnage, we continued our search, though the woods now felt heavier, the air thick with the coppery scent of blood. With every step, strange symbols carved into the bark of the trees seemed to watch us, glyphs that twisted the natural lines into something sinister. They were like scars on the skin of the world, hinting at old, dark secrets etched deep in the wood. "Lisa." My throat was raw from shouting, the syllables of her name fraying with each repetition. "Could she be?" Sarah's voice trailed off, unable to finish the thought that hung between us, unspeakable, yet heavy with dread. "Stop it. We don't know anything yet," I snapped, more harshly than intended. Fear had sharpened my words into blades. "Sorry," she murmured, her gaze locked on the ground, perhaps seeking solace in not seeing the horror we walked through. And so we trudged on, calling for a friend who might never answer, haunted by the signs of unseen malice lurking in the heart of Appalachia. Branches cracked underfoot as we moved through the darkening woods, the shadows growing longer with the waning day. The air was thick with unease, each rustle of leaves a whisper of potential threat. "Damn it, Lisa, where are you?" Mark's voice was tinged with an edge of panic now, his usual composure fraying at the ends. "Let's just hang on a minute," I huffed. "She couldn't have gone far." "Yeah," Sarah shot back, her eyes narrowing as she scanned our tense faces. "What if one of us knows exactly where Lisa is?" "Are you suggesting?" Mark's disbelief was palpable, a match ready to ignite. "I'm not suggesting anything," Sarah said quickly, but the seed of distrust had been sown. sprouting roots in the fertile soil of our fear. "Stop it," I barked, feeling my own suspicions churning. "Accusing each other isn't going to help us find her." But the damage was done. We were no longer just friends searching for Lisa. We were potential adversaries, each wondering if the other's concern was genuine or a mask, hiding darker motives. "Let's just keep looking," I continued, my voice strained as I tried to smooth the jagged edges of our fractured group. We pressed on, the silence between us speaking volumes as it stretched and twisted, a tangible thing. Our beams of flashlight cut through the darkness, desperate to reveal Lisa's form huddled somewhere safe, but all they found were more questions in the shadows. "Lisa," I called again, the hope in my voice thinning like the crescent moon above. "Maybe she fell," offered Mark, though he didn't sound convinced. "And she didn't even scream," Sarah countered, her eyes sharp as flint. "No, someone here knows more than they're saying." "Look," I pointed toward a break in the trees, where the moonlight revealed a clearing. "We haven't checked there yet." With heavy hearts and wary glances, we made our way toward the open space. Each step felt like a descent, not just into the clearing, but deeper into the labyrinth of our own paranoia. And still, we searched, because amidst the horror and suspicion, the thought of abandoning Lisa to the mercies of these haunted woods was unthinkable. The forest seemed to close in around us, its twisted branches like skeletal fingers clawing at the fringes of sanity. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a relentless drumbeat echoing the turmoil within our little band of friends. Underneath the iron grip of the night's chill, we trudged forward, searching for Lisa with a hope that was beginning to fray at the edges. "Did you see that?" Jessica's voice sliced through the silence and all movement ceased. "See what?" Jim asked, his breath misting before him, eyes darting nervously from shadow to shadow. "Over there," she pointed, her hand trembling. "There was something." We strained our eyes into the darkness, and it was then that they appeared. Apparitions that defied explanation, shadows woven from the very fabric of the night. They were human in shape, but devoid of detail, flickering at the periphery of vision as if our minds struggled to acknowledge their existence. An icy dread seeped into my bones, and a silent question hung over us all. Were these phantoms or mere tricks of the light? We pressed on, the specters of doubt and terror trailing us like silent predators. And as we did, reality seemed to distort, the woods reshaping themselves into an unsolvable puzzle. Landmarks previously etched into memory now vanished, replaced by an endless expanse of eerie sameness. "Water's gone," Roger muttered, fumbling with his empty canteen. I checked my own supplies, finding them similarly depleted. Our provisions, once ample for a weekend retreat, had dwindled to crumbs and dregs. Hunger gnawed at my stomach, a reminder of our vulnerability in this forsaken wilderness. "Anyone else feeling turned around?" Jim asked, scratching his ginger hair in frustration. The question was rhetorical. We were all lost, though no one admitted it aloud. "Let's just focus on finding Lisa," I suggested, trying to keep the panic from my voice. "She's out here alone, without food or water." "Or maybe she's not," Roger mumbled, pushing his glasses up his nose. "Maybe she found a way out. Maybe we're the ones who are truly lost." "Stop it," Jessica snapped. "We can't think like that. We have to believe we'll find her and we'll get out of here together." Her words were meant to be encouraging, but they hung heavy in the air, full of a desperation we all shared. It was becoming increasingly difficult to distinguish between the horrors conjured by our imaginations and those that might actually lurk in the shadows of these cursed woods. "Shh! Listen," I whispered suddenly. For a moment there was nothing but the sound of our own breathing. Then, faintly, the ghostly giggle of children reached our ears, an echo of laughter, whatever the source, the disembodied laughter tangled with the wind, a sinister lullaby that beckoned us deeper into the unknown. With each step, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were pawns in some malevolent game, the rules of which were understood only by the forest and its ghostly inhabitants. "Lisa," we called into the void, our voices growing hoarse with the effort. But the only reply was the mocking whisper of leaves and the distant, chilling laughter of unseen children, leaving us to wonder if we would ever escape the suffocating embrace of the Appalachian woods. Branches clawed at my face as we pushed deeper into the forest's heart, the darkness swallowing us whole. Panic festered within me like an open wound, each rustle in the underbrush a potential harbinger of doom. We were no longer seekers of the wayward Lisa. We had become hunted, prey to the night and its unseen specters. "Lisa!" I shouted again, my voice ragged with fear. "Where are you?" We trudged on, our once organized search pattern deteriorating into chaos. The forest seemed to rearrange itself with each step, familiar paths dissolving into uncharted territory, leaving us disoriented and doubting our own memories. "Look at this," Jim said abruptly, stopping to point at a tree. Carved into the bark was a symbol, foreign yet somehow more terrifying than any natural threat. A circle entwined with angular lines, an emblem of intentional malice. "Guys, look!" Jessica's voice broke through our contemplation, her hands shaking as she held up Lisa's camera, the strap torn as if ripped from her neck in haste. "I found it by those bushes." "Then she must be close," I said, though my optimism rang hollow. "Let's keep moving," Jim decided, taking the lead with a resolve that belied the fear I saw lurking in his eyes. The woods seemed to close in around us, the trees whispering secrets we couldn't decipher. Every shadow threatened to spring to life. Every snapped twig was a signal of our impending doom. Our supplies, meager as they were, dwindled with each passing hour, hunger gnawing at our bellies as fiercely as terror gnawed at our minds. "Lisa," our chorus of desperate calls continued to pierce the silence, each cry a testament to our unraveling sanity. But Lisa remained an enigma, a ghost, lost among ghosts. "Wait, do you hear that?" Jessica paused, her expression stricken. We all stopped, straining our ears against the stillness. A low growl rumbled from the thicket, a sound primal and full of menace. We exchanged glances, each of us understanding the unspoken truth. Something was stalking us through the shadowy veil of the forest. As we huddled close, our collective breath fogging the cold air, I realized that Lisa's disappearance was only the beginning. The true horror lay in the unknown dangers closing in around us, and the realization that the Appalachian wilderness held mysteries far older and more malevolent than any of us could have imagined. "Stay strong," I murmured, more to myself than to my friends. "We'll find her." But as the darkness thickened and the growls grew closer, doubt crept into my heart like a chilling fog. We ended the chapter not as saviors on a valiant quest, but as survivors clinging to hope amidst the encroaching terrors of the woods. The last glimmers of daylight had long surrendered to the dominion of twilight as we trudged back to our makeshift campsite, a clearing surrounded by the towering sentinels of ancient trees. My muscles ached with each step, my boots heavy with the burden of fruitless hours spent searching for Lisa through the twisted underbrush and deceptive calm. "Any sign?" The question came from Mark, his voice barely above a whisper, eyes sunken with worry beneath the brim of his faded baseball cap. "Nothing," I replied, the word tasting of defeat on my dry lips. "She's just—" We gathered around the remnants of the morning's fire, now a pitiful pile of embers struggling against the encroaching chill of night. Sarah, her usually vibrant red hair now dulled by dirt and despair, reignited the flames with practiced hands, coaxing life back into the coals. They flickered hesitantly at first, then grew bolder, casting an erratic dance of shadows upon our weary faces. "Here, get closer." Her voice was gentle but carried the authority of necessity. We huddled closer to the campfire, like moths drawn to a beacon of hope in a sea of darkness. The warmth seeped into our bones, offering a mere semblance of comfort against the creeping dread that clung to us as tightly as the cold. I glanced at the others, Mark, Sarah, Tyler, and Jenna, each lost in their own thoughts, their gazes flitting between the fire and the opaque curtain of night that surrounded us. The forest beyond our small circle of light seemed alive, a breathing entity watching, waiting. The flickering flames cast monstrous shapes that danced just out of sight, teasing our imaginations with fears of what might lurk beyond. "Did you hear that?" Tyler's voice, strained with apprehension, sliced through the silence that had settled over us. "Probably just an animal," Jenna tried to assure him, but her voice lacked conviction. The wilderness had a way of distorting sounds, turning the rustle of leaves or snap of a twig into the footsteps of an unseen predator, or worse, a harbinger of horrors yet to unfold. It was then, in our most vulnerable moment, that the inbred figure appeared, towering at the edge of our campsite, its presence announced by the sickening thud of an axe embedding into a nearby tree. Our heads snapped toward the sound, our bodies frozen in primal fear. "Run!" I choked out, the terror seizing my voice as I stumbled to my feet. The creature was a nightmare given form, mottled skin stretched over twisted features, its eyes reflecting the firelight with predatory hunger. It took a step toward us, the glint of the axe mirroring the madness in its gaze. The camp became a whirlwind of chaos, screams tearing through the silence of the night as we scattered like leaves in a storm. I heard the ragged breaths of my friends, the desperate pounding of my own heart as the forest swallowed us whole. The underbrush snarled around my ankles as I plunged through the woods, each step a desperate bid for salvation. The others were somewhere to my left, or was it my right? Their panting breaths had become part of the night's cacophony, indistinguishable from the rasping leaves and snapping twigs beneath our frantic feet. "Over here, this way." Jenna's voice pierced the darkness, a beacon in the dense thicket of fear. I veered toward her, branches cutting across my face, leaving thin ribbons of pain in their wake. We stumbled into a clearing, momentarily disoriented by the open space. "Marcy? Eric?" Jenna's voice wavered, betraying the steel she tried to muster. "Here," Marcy gasped from somewhere beyond the tree line. Eric's response was a stifled groan, the sound of his struggle filtering through the brush. "Keep moving," I urged, my words laced with a tremor that I couldn't stifle. "It's still out there." We didn't need to speak its name. The inbred, deformed figure had become a living nightmare. Its grotesque image burned into our retinas. With every crunch of foliage underfoot, we imagined it closer, its malformed silhouette just a blink away from emerging into our reality. And then, like a malevolent drumbeat, the heavy footsteps began again. Thud, 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 each one an ominous echo that seemed to synchronize with our racing hearts. There was no rhythm to our flight, but the figure behind us marched with a terrifying precision, unhurried, as if it knew that time was on its side. "Go, go, go!" My shout was more reflex than command. We scattered once more, the illusion of our brief unity shattered by the relentless pursuit. I could feel the creature's gaze on me, a weight heavier than the dark Appalachian sky that pressed down upon us. Our breaths came in ragged gasps, the air sharp against our throats, every inhalation a mixture of icy fear and humid despair. Muscles screamed in protest, limbs moved on memory alone, our bodies driven beyond their limits by the primal urge to survive. "Where's the trail?" Eric panted, his question a hollow plea tossed into the void. None of us had an answer. The forest had become a labyrinth with no discernible exit, each path looping back on itself, leading us deeper into the belly of dread. "Doesn't matter," I called back, my voice hoarse. "Just keep running." But how long could we keep this up? How long before exhaustion claimed us, one by one, leaving us at the mercy of the twisted horror that hunted us with such single-minded intent? Can't run," Marcy's voice crackled through the trees, a note of finality piercing the chaos. "Stay strong." It was Jenna, ever the anchor. Even as the tides of terror threatened to sweep us away, we can't let it take us. Yet even as her words spurred us on, the truth gnawed at the edges of my mind. We were prey, cornered and weary, and the predator was closing in. "Keep together," I shouted, though I could barely see their shadows flickering between the trunks. "Don't let it!" A sudden break in the canopy above revealed a sliver of moonlight, casting the world in a pale, unforgiving glow. It was enough to glimpse the figure looming behind us, its axe glinting dully, a silent harbinger of doom. "Run." It was all I could say, all I could do as the cold fingers of fate brushed against my spine. The woods were alive with our screams, yet deathly silent in their secrets, holding us tight within their unyielding embrace. Branches clawed at my skin as I fled, the thud of my own heart deafening in my ears. Leaves rustled menacingly with the promise of unseen terrors, each snap of a twig beneath my boots echoing like a gunshot through the forest's eerie silence. Keep moving," I muttered to myself, the mantra barely escaping my lips as ragged breaths tore from my lungs. I had always been the one with a plan, the one who led the way, but here, amidst these ancient trees, I was nothing but prey, running blind. Suddenly, the dense undergrowth gave way to a clearing that stopped me dead in my tracks. A chill crept up my spine as the stench of decay wafted toward me on a breeze that felt too cold for the season. My stomach turned. It was the smell of death, thick and cloying, wrapping around me like a shroud. Moonlight filtered through the gaunt branches above, casting an ethereal glow over the scene before me. It was a grotesque parody of a butcher's shop, with carcasses hanging from meat hooks. Ghastly figures that bore a disturbing resemblance to human forms. Their skin was pallid, marred by bruises and cuts, the lifelong drained from their staring eyes. Those empty sockets seemed to look right through me, whispering silent accusations of my helplessness. I could hear it then, the muffled sobs and desperate pleas, puncturing the night with shards of raw terror. The cries of imprisoned women emanated from the darkness beyond the clearing, each one a dagger twisting into my conscience. They were close, so close I could almost reach out and touch their fear. "God, help us," I breathed, a prayer to a deity I wasn't sure was listening. My gaze was held captive by the horror before me, the stark reality of our situation, sinking its icy claws deep into my flesh. We had wandered into a nightmare, one from which waking up was not an option. In this moment, stripped of bravado and reduced to primal instincts, I understood what it meant to be truly alone. "Please, no," I whispered to the ghastly tableau, pleading with phantoms and specters of the mind. But there was no solace to be found among the dead. A sob broke from my throat, unbidden, as I stumbled backward, my resolve crumbling like ash. The others, they needed me to be strong, to lead them out of this hellscape. Yet how could I shield them from a fate that now seemed inevitable? "Help me," a voice cracked through the night, a symphony of anguish that echoed my own despair. Lisa. The name came out as a choked gasp, my every muscle tensing with the fragile thread of hope that her voice represented, even as the rest of me trembled with dread. "Is anyone there?" Another cry rose, disembodied and full of pain. "Stay quiet. I'm coming." My words were carried away, swallowed by the oppressive darkness that pressed in from all sides. But even as I took a step forward, ready to wade into the abyss to save those who remained, the ominous presence of our hunter lurked at the fringes of my consciousness. The chase was far from over, and the predator was still hungry. The wind howled like a mournful spirit, its icy fingers clawing at the splintered wood of the forsaken barn that loomed ahead. Its gaping doorway, ajar and unwelcoming, resembled the maw of some great beast, eager to swallow any foolhardy enough to enter its shadow-haunted depths. A shudder coursed through me as I fixed my gaze upon it, the weathered planks groaning under the weight of innumerable sins long past. "Who's there?" The words fell from my lips, a whisper barely audible above the wind's keening lament. My heart took up a pounding rhythm, each beat reverberating in my ears like the drumming of some pagan ritual, quickening as the very air seemed charged with an electric sense of dread. From within the darkened threshold of the barn, a figure emerged, a grotesque parody of man, its form twisted and malevolent. The inbred deformed giant stood swaying slightly, the moonlight glinting off the wet sheen of blood that coated its hands and stained its tattered clothing. A grin, wide and unsettling, split its features, revealing a jagged row of teeth that gleamed with feral hunger. To its side materialized the elderly pair, their misshapen bodies casting disturbing shadows on the ground, their eyes, milky with cataracts and malice, fixed upon me with an unnerving intensity, while their smiles stretched too wide, too knowing. And then the sound, a chorus of soft, eerie giggles from the children, their innocence corrupted into something chilling. "Can't stay away from our hospitality, can you?" the deformed figure said, the words oozing with menace. It stepped forward, the sound of its heavy footfalls a death knell that resonated through the stillness of the clearing. "Please," I managed, the words strangled by fear. "What do you want?" Their laughter intensified, a cacophony of madness that bore into my skull, the sound twisting around the edges of my fraying sanity. I was caught in their web, a fly ensnared by spiders that mocked the very notion of escape. "Welcome home," the children sang in unison, their voices discordantly sweet amidst the horror that encircled us. And as they advanced, I knew the grim truth. This unholy family was the stuff of nightmares made flesh, and I had wandered into their domain, a lamb amongst wolves, a man ensnared by the darkest throes of Appalachia's forgotten heart.